Hello and welcome back to the Lapdown podcast. It's our Japanese Grand Prix recap. And thank you for listening to the Lapdown podcast. That was our Japanese Grand Prix recap. We'll see you on Thursday as we look ahead to Bahrain. Anything else, Dan?
No.
Happy days. See you all next week. Dan, I'm not going to ask how you're doing because I know how you're doing because you woke up at 5 to 6 for that. But that aside, how are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, I would say a day later I feel a bit better about the idea of waking up at 5:55 in the morning to watch the Japanese Grand Prix, but I don't. So, a fair play to F1 to making these highlights 8 minutes and 7 seconds long. By the way,
yeah,
I haven't watched them, but fair play to getting that timestamp on that YouTube video.
Yeah, I don't quite. I mean, they must have done like a huge amount of like grid build up. Right, that sort of stuff at the start before the lights go out, and put a load of that in there, and then plenty of radio post race, and that sort of chews up a couple of minutes, doesn't it? And then you're away. Yeah. I don't know how you say unbanged in Japanese. If one of our lovely listeners that speaks Japanese could tell us how you say unbanged in Japanese, I'm incredibly unbanged from that. Like the most unbanged I've been for a long time.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll do the bangability tier list at the end of the season, and unfortunately, I think we've got an early season front runner for the one that's going to end up in possibly even in a bin category, the unbanged bin down the bottom. Oh, it was a shame, isn't it? Because it's the Japanese Grand Prix, and it's cool.
This was meant to be one of the good tracks.
It is, and the circuit's great, and the drivers love it, and the fans are great, and there's been so many cool things that have happened in history. But as I've said all along, AB, and I've been consistent on this podcast, get rid of all of these classic circuits that all of the history is from. Stick it in the town centres, 4 long straights, 4 corners, and let them slipstream the shit out of each other with 1.5 km DRS things, because then we'll get some overtakes. I've said it since day one.
That's classic Dan Jads. Classic Dan Jads. We're just the cars are out.
Tokyo. Sorry to interrupt, but yeah,
the cars are outgrowing these tracks, aren't they? That's the problem. And okay, 26 regs, we are taking a very, very small step in the right direction. I think they're about 3% smaller than they are now. I mean, we're a long way off them being the correct size for a lot of these tracks, which it affects all the tracks as well. I think a lot of the street circuits would also be better if the cars were smaller and more nimble, and you could maybe fit 3 side by side as opposed to 1.5. But yeah, I mean, when you started in the same order as your top 6, then finished, and there was no risk of it not being that, not the best 53 laps of driving. I shan't say racing. Driving we'll see this year. Did you see the paddock highlight? I don't know if this was an official compilation or someone, but there was highlights from the paddock interviews afterwards where like 7 or 8 drivers went, yeah, not a great race. Yeah, really lonely race. Yeah, not the best race. Yeah, boring race. It's just like, oh dear.
Yeah.
Oh dear. I mean, Oscar said it in the cool down, didn't he?
Yeah, he summed it up really well, didn't he? He sat down and just kind of looked at it, and I think his words were almost to the word were, was that it?
Yes.
Was that the only highlight? For a race that felt quite intense, is that all that happened?
Yeah.
End quotes. My heart sunk when the lights went out and everybody just kind of like concertinaed into line going into turn 1. And I went, oh.
It's like they merged onto a motorway, wasn't it?
Genuinely felt like it, yeah. Genuinely felt like it. And I went, oh, that's that then.
Yeah.
That's it. And that was it, and that was the fat lady singing. I mean, let's not talk about the race because there's absolutely fuck all to talk about.
There are some other
right. It's done.
There are some other things to talk about from the weekend. Forgetting the 23, the 53. There are things from the weekend as a whole. Should we start with Yuki because he was going to be the big story coming into the weekend?
Yep.
Do we think Yuki did enough to impress at the Japanese Grand Prix?
Absolutely no idea. No, genuinely not a clue. I don't know. He looked quite good
Christian
in the
Horner. Did he impress you?
I have no idea. I don't know. He looked really good in all of the sessions that didn't matter, and then came around to the session that really did matter and bottled it, and ended up poochling around in the lower middle field, and ended up scoring as many points as Liam Lawson has managed to do in the 2 preceding races. So I don't know. as we said before, he's got a longer leash. Has he done anything to impress?
I think he looked more at home in that car. He didn't look as... This is horrible wording, but he didn't look as scared in that car as some of the other drivers have in recent history. Like, he jumped into it and was, within a tenth of Max in FP1 and, didn't seem completely out of his depth in it. And Christian Horner said some vaguely nice things.
Look, let's give him time and let's judge him after Bahrain.
Okay. 2 races. The 2 race time.
That's time. That's Red Bull time. They're like dog years, aren't they? Red Bull races are like dog years. 2 races is actually like 100 human years. So if you haven't impressed in 2 races, done.
I don't know if you're being a little bit harsh on Yuki, though, that I think he probably did impress. That, okay, he was P12, right? That's not ideal. But he started side by side with Lawson, and Lawson went backwards and finished P17, I think, and Yuki, managed to hold position in a race where no one went forwards. That he didn't qualify at P20 is the first thing to say. He managed to qualify it not reasonably, but he made it out of Q1.
He got it. He got it there.
And I don't know. I think that might actually, God forbid, have a slightly happy ending on that story. Finally.
Maybe. And I can kind of feel you're really trying to kind of draw the positives out of it, and just trying a bit of impartiality on the podcast.
It's just we can't have 30 minutes of you just saying I don't know over and over again.
But the thing is we don't. I mean, the one thing I can say is the fact that the sister car of that, Max Verstappen, led every single lap of the race and finished with 25 points to his name. Yuki Tsunoda, in the car that won the Grand Prix, has finished 58.5 seconds behind his teammate, no points to his name. He's finished behind Oliver Behrman, who is in his 3rd Grand Prix in a Haas that looks like it has square wheels. Alex Albon in a Williams, who we kind of expect to occupy that kind of P9, 10, 11, 12 spot. And then Isaac Hadjar in the team that he's just left has gone and finished 8th and picked up 4 points in the team that isn't the team that should be the team but isn't the team. That's why I don't... And the thing is, they have created such a shit show for themselves because of what they've done with their drivers. This is where I think I sit, and I'm probably what a lot of other people think. I don't know what Yuki has to do to impress, because 12th with no points to your name is not an impressive start to your Red Bull career. It just isn't. It's better. It's marginally better, but it's not impressive. Impressive is Yuki Tsunoda finishing P4 behind the McLarens and going, oh, yeah, you know what? He had a good little scrap there with George and with Leclerc, and maybe Red Bull have really got that driver right. He didn't do that. He fluffed it in the session that mattered. He qualified outside of the top 10 and found it really hard on a Grand Prix that was difficult to overtake and managed to finish 12th behind an Aston Martin, which has been stinky this year as well. He's overtaken a Haas.
It's about relativity, though, isn't it? It's about relativity.
The car won the Grand Prix.
With the bloke that's been driving that car for the last 8 years or whatever, that there are factors involved, and if we compare it to the performance of other people that jumped straight into that car recently, he has done exponentially better in terms of finishing position with the amount of prep that
Sergio started pretty well in 2024.
I mean, well, yeah, because he'd been in the car for 3 years. Yuki had 2.1 practice sessions in that, and then Q1 was very good. I don't know. I'm not saying he was impressive. That's the other thing, is I'm saying, did he impress? And was he impressive and did he impress are not necessarily the same, in saying they share a lot of letters in the word, but you can also, if I got into that Red Bull and finished P20, I would say I would have impressed, because I don't know how to drive a fucking F1 car. Compared to what was available. I don't know. I just think...
Yeah.
I think you've been listening to Jacques Villeneuve for too long as well, with your negative contrary takes.
The thing is we don't know what the measuring stick that he's being judged by. That's the issue there, I think. And we've got our own measuring sticks. Did he impress? Didn't he impress? You think he did? I think he didn't. But what does that actually mean when it comes to the people that are going to pay his paycheck at the end of each Grand Prix? That, I think, is the bigger thing. I realise, obviously, we don't have any insight on what Red Bull are up to and what they're doing, but it's an opinion-based thing. And I would say as a positive bit of PR, then yes, Christian Horner comes out, says some nice things. I think they're going to be disappointed the fact they haven't picked up any points.
Yeah. If a Lando Norris jumps in the Red Bull in the current state of the Red Bull and was given 2.1 practice sessions, does Lando Norris finish second in it?
No, I don't think so. But I don't think Yuki finishes second either. But I think for Yuki to finish outside of the points, I think is where it gets a little bit grey as to whether it's good or bad.
Okay. Yeah.
And this is what happens if Bahrain doesn't work.
Yeah, I don't think their car will be as good in Bahrain because you can actually do a bit of overtaking in Bahrain as well, can't you? Which is helpful.
And I think he was quite racy last year against Daniel, wasn't he, at Bahrain? So he quite likes the circuit.
Mainly after the race. Mainly after all the cars had slowed down.
But if it doesn't work, then we have got a bit of a, I don't know. There's a conflict there, isn't there? But anyway, let's not talk about it. Let's wait for Bahrain. We've only got to wait about 3 days for that to get going, and hopefully we get a bit more of an exciting Grand Prix. But yes, Jacques. 1997 Formula One world champion Jacques Villeneuve was promoted from the paddock, sat alongside Crofty, and I must admit, I didn't hear who was commentating, but it did take me a long time to figure out it was Jacques Villeneuve, but I didn't like any of the words that I heard.
No. Not a great race to make your debut is the other thing I'll say. They were having to... it was like a very slow afternoon session in a test match where we're just going short ball theory with 5 men out on the leg side. So, okay, I will allow a little bit of leeway for that they were having to reach to find some things to talk about.
A bit like us on the podcast.
Yep. Where's Martin? Bring Martin back, please. I'll have Martin in Bahrain, please, and thank you. I'm sure that Jacques has a lot of good insight to offer. Commentary is not the place for him to offer that. Let's let him do some pre-recorded pieces before and after. Please and thank you. Again, first time, there was no real vibe between him and Crofty. It felt quite confrontational some of the times,
isn't it?
It was a little bit jarring. I'm not sure it was. I'm not sure it was a wonderful debut.
No, it kind of felt like Jacques Villeneuve would start up a really successful Formula One podcast because he just didn't really have a huge personality about him. And I kind of feel like that would be a really safe space for him to operate. But I never got the impression that he was desperate to be there. No. I agree with you. I think there was a little bit of like niggle between the two of them as if to kind of like who was the big dog in the commentary box. I thought what he was good at was saying what the possibilities were to actually happen. But then kind of started to kind of laugh at his own jokes. And then I kind of struggled with that. But I couldn't work out whether that was like first day at school nerves. I couldn't work out whether, because as you say, the Grand Prix was terrible.
Yeah.
It was very strange. But I do genuinely think it's one of those things that we don't realise how lucky we are to have Martin Brundle as how we have him now. Because he's fantastic. And it's completely understandable as life kind of moves on and he gets older. He wants to calm down a bit and not do as much and completely get it. Whoever takes over that second seat next to Crofty is going to find that incredibly difficult to go and fill those boots. And you'd be able to argue and say that Jacques Villeneuve would be more qualified than Martin Brundle. He won more Grand Prix. He won a world championship. He was racing with the Williams team that obviously is still incredibly... But yes, okay, Martin was Ayrton Senna's teammate, would have had input there. But I don't think it worked. And I would be disappointed, I think, if he was in alongside David Croft again in, any form of future.
Yeah, you could tell that he does have a wonderful amount of insight. That was very clear. And as you say, he made some points occasionally where you're like, that's an interesting thought. He was obsessed with thinking that people had track limits violations when they were very not close to that. Particularly coming out of like Degner 2. He loved to suggest that someone was going to lose their lap time when they were not even like riding the line. I think perhaps if he would have been in a third seat and we could have had Crofty, maybe Martin, or even like, I don't know, Anthony Davidson or Karun Chandok or a more seasoned commentator. And then special comments down to third man, Jacques seen something. but not in that.
There's a track limits violation at no, Jacques, not again.
But not the Skypad style. Like, let him be Bernie Collins, not listening to radios, not looking at info, just vibes.
Yeah.
I need a vibes color commentator. I think he would be decent. But yes,
I find it.
Martin
I do
Backflies.
find that the Sky package quite difficult because of the inconsistencies as to who they have as and when they have them. Because I never really I don't think I ever kind of get the best combination. And I don't really ever know whether anybody gets enough of a chance to really kind of bed into doing what they're doing because they're going to do one and then kind of go and sit on the bench for the next 3 weeks because somebody else is coming back. So that, I guess, is difficult. I mean, Bernie's not always there. Naomi Schiff's not always there. Then for some ridiculous reason, Danica Patrick's there. Then Jensen Button's there, but they always pair Button up with Danica Patrick, which seems to be kind of fairly antagonistic.
It's because it's fun.
Crofty's sometimes there, then he's not. Then Martin's there, and then he's not. And Simon's there, and then he's not. It is a little bit kind of. It does kind of feel like a bit of a job that you either want to do it or you don't. Mm-hmm. And potentially the people up in the bigger boardrooms in Sky may be needed with some of these people to turn around and say, it's one or the other. You're either doing it or you're not.
Yeah. I don't. It's tricky, isn't it? 24 flyaway race weekends a year is tough. I don't know really. And whether or not there's perhaps an element of the change needs to be more gradual, or we need to do it slightly more in blocks, and that it's okay. We've got these people for the next 3 races, and then we're going to sub one of those seats out, and it can be a little bit more of a gradiented thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, as I say, not a great race weekend to make your commentary debut. To be fair, I get a little bit the same. It's that comfort thing, isn't it? You hear this. You're so used to Croft and Brundle that when you don't get that, it's a little bit like, oh, okay. I'm sure we'll see him again. I don't think Sky would have put him on a 1-race contract, and I don't know how far in advance this was planned. I don't know if they even explained why Martin wasn't there this weekend, whether he just didn't fancy a trip to Japan or whether he was ill or what. But
I'd have thought Japan would be quite high on the list of places to go,
If I'm given the choice if I could have Japan off or Bahrain off, nothing against Bahrain, but Japan looks cool as balls. Bahrain, sandier, maybe less going on.
And I mean, I'm sure they're not flying out economy either. I'm sure that kind of 12-hour flight is lay flat beds, champagne on arrival and stuff. It's probably quite pleasant, I would have thought, flying around the world.
As pleasant as it can be.
Yes, exactly. Well, yeah, pleasanter than sitting next to 2 people you've never met before in a row of 3 and then thinking about, can I go to the toilet? No, I can't go to the toilet because they're asleep. Bugger. But anyway, yeah, it's done. He did make an interesting point, Jacques. In the 53 laps, and you'd hope with the amount of words that he did say, sooner or later he would stumble across something interesting and potentially kind of thought-provoking, which I think is what we want to talk about next. And it is whether are McLaren kind of penalising themselves because they haven't or aren't prepared to have that you're our number 1 without sounding like S Club 7 and you're the number 2 driver. Because it felt for a long time they could have forced a hand. They could have tried to manipulate a race there. Something that maybe another team might have done in the past with a Lewis and Valtteri. But they didn't. They quite were happy, it felt like, just to follow Max around 1 and 2 for 53 laps. And if Max's car expired, they'd have gone,
yeah,
that's all right. Cool. They didn't try anything. They weren't interested.
I don't think at this point McLaren can nominate a number 1 driver, I think is a lot of the problem, because I think, and a couple of weeks ago I said I thought it was silly that Oscar was now allegedly being paid the same as Lando.
Yeah.
But now, 3 races in, they are very, very evenly matched this year on what we've seen so far, both in quali and race performance, that it would be harsh on either of them to be demoted, if you like, to a second driver position, and there's not a huge amount. You'd probably have to give it to Lando as the incumbent based on last year, but based on, okay, he has finished ahead, but based on what we've seen so far, they are very, very evenly matched, and they're going to sit side by side for a lot of it. And I think they can't pick a number 1 driver, and I absolutely think it's it's not hurting them in the sense that they've not lost a huge amount of ground to Red Bull there because it is 2-on-1. And if it's always 2-on-1, they're going to win. Ultimately, I think a McLaren driver will win the Drivers' Championship this year because I think the fact that we were so impressed by what Max did at Suzuka tells you that Max is not going to be in that position all the time. George Russell raced again on the weekend. Don't know if you noticed that.
He did well, didn't he?
He was there. Again, I don't think he's going to be consistently knocking a McLaren off of absolute maximum points. So by that token, you can kind of just let him go for it. And as long as we are getting 2 and 3 behind the occasional one, there's going to be plenty of other 1s and 2s in there as well. Yeah, but I do think it limits them. And I think that was proven that they weren't prepared to take a risk on one of those drivers and keep one of them out 5 laps longer. Or at the very least, don't just come in looking at the gearbox of Max Verstappen, because you're going to come out of the pits looking at the gearbox of Max Verstappen again. You can see no one can overtake. Do something funky. You've got a 12-second gap back to Charles in P4, for fuck's sake.
It ended up being 16 seconds, didn't it? But yeah, and I mean, do you end up upsetting one of the drivers if you try something and it doesn't work, and then they're going, well, why did you throw away a P2 for me? I don't know. It's a weird one, isn't it? Because it's always Lando and Oscar. It's never Oscar and Lando in terms of the way that their drivers are announced and spoken about. It's always Lando first. So subconsciously, I think it does feel like Lando is the number one. But maybe that is, as you say, because he's the guy that served the longest in the sentence there. That he's been there longer. Yeah. But even though they're not that much older than one another, and Lando's a bit more experienced.
I feel like Lando's maybe slightly more marketable currently than Oscar. I mean, Oscar's not a terrible looking guy, but you're going to sell more Lando calendars than you're going to sell Oscar calendars. You know, Lando sort of maybe plays up to being an influencer more, if you like. We do see a little bit of Oscar, but his mum seems to do more influencer work and social work than he does, which I wonder if that plays into not team choices, but when we always hear Lando and Oscar, and probably I think for most people, if you go, who are McLaren's drivers, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, and they'll probably get to the answer, but it's probably Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, and I think that's because you see more of him.
It would be interesting. It would be interesting to have that crystal ball, roll it 12 races forward, and see kind of what state it's in. And as you said, I think you're right in the sense that they will outscore Max enough times to know that it is going to be Lando or Oscar. But at the point it gets down to like 10 races to go, how close is that Lando or Oscar?
Yeah.
What's that kind of friendly, like boyish, teenagery, bantery relationship going to be like in 10 races time? Is Max going to be far enough behind for them to be able to start kind of pissing around and genuinely racing each other, and maybe having a few little whoopsie daisies and a few little kind of front wing end plates puncturing tires and stuff? We'll see. I'm excited. I am excited because I don't think Max is going to be that far behind, and I do think we could have a genuine three-way for the end of the. That's a poor choice of words, isn't it? A genuine three-way battle.
Sell some calendars of that.
Oh, yeah. Getting through to the end of I'll tell you what, actually, the first time, and I know we kind of bag on Max quite a lot here, but for the first time in a long time, I saw Max on the telly, and I went, actually looks a bit on the older side now. He doesn't look quite as young and kind of fresh-faced as what he had done, but I don't know, that was just
if he was next to Kimi and Hajar,
that's probably his part of it. Yeah,
not look old enough to be in the car.
What else have we got to talk about?
We'll touch briefly on Kimi and Hajar, I suppose, because them and you mentioned Ollie Behrman earlier. The rookies are doing really well for themselves. Yeah. Like, fair play. They've come in, and Antonelli in particular will probably give the most props to, because he has slotted into an incredibly vacant seat with who he's followed up from, and he's just slotted in, and he doesn't stick out, and you expect him to be up there, and he's up there. And you know what? Well done.
Yeah, no, he's done nicely. One of the rookies that maybe not so much is Jack Doohan. He has inherited an absolute dog show of a car. Yeah, he's not been given the keys to a Mercedes, has he? Let's be honest. But you highlighted this. I'll let you kind of take it away. But he didn't look in the best of shape, did he, at the end of that Japanese Grand Prix?
No, there is a clip from the end of the race from his onboard. Jack Doohan could not get himself out of the car and needed the help of 2 people to get him out of that Formula One car. Now, there is no way I don't think that he went through a 51G crash or whatever it was, like 24 hours before, and isn't feeling some effects of that. It might just be stiffness. I did some digging in my garden yesterday. I don't think I could get out of an F1 car at the minute. But I'm going to put my tin foil on for a little bit. I'm going to put me tin foil headphones on.
I'm excited.
Is this an opportunity for Alpine to have a free hit with putting the preferred driver of the Lapdown podcast, Mr. Franco Colapinto, into that car? He's been testing at Monza this week, and if Jack Doohan couldn't get himself out of that car and then needed Esteban Ocon, good guy Esteban Ocon, A, to come over and help him out, and then B, to put his arm around him and walk him, into wherever they need to go and get weighed and all the rest of it. If you're Alpine and you know Franco's been in a Formula One car this week for real, not a simulator, out on track, do you go, Jack is feeling, he's a little bit shaken up, heavy impact. We need to be mindful of his well-being and his safety. Franco's in for the Bahrain Grand Prix, and because it's then another one straight after that, he's also in for wherever we go after Bahrain. I want to say heavy street circuit. And then I think they want to make that move.
Saudi.
Let's go into Saudi when I can't get out of the car and I can barely move. I just have a feeling that Alpine might use the fact that Jack Doohan might be a little bit banged up as a way potentially to throw Colapinto into that car sooner than they were even thinking, even if it was short term, and that short term might become long term.
Yeah.
That's my Rustly tin.
It's a bit sly. It's a bit sly.
It's very sly.
It's a bit kind of, we'll look after you. Like, we didn't really look after you in Japan. We made you go and do that 53 lap race, and you weren't really kind of fit enough to do it. I might be coincidence, because as Oscar said, there was a really flat out race and an intense race, and it looks like an incredibly hard circuit to drive, like really high speed corners, as Jack found out the day before. Yeah. But there is obviously a great chance that it isn't coincidental, in the fact that impact, which was large, would have then had an impact on his ability to have been able-bodied enough to get out of the car if he'd needed to have done so quickly, which fortunately he didn't have to, because otherwise they could have been a different kind of conversation to have had there. But a bit sly. Do Alpine come out looking good from it? I don't think so. If they kind of go, Lee got a bit of delayed concussion, so we'll get Franco in, and well, now we can't get rid of him because he scored points. So sorry, Jack, but we're going to carry on with Frank. We need him for the podcast, because the podcast has no soul without Franco Colapinto. No. That's proven by basic science. Did you also see actually about Franco Colapinto, as we're talking about the preferred driver of the Lapdown podcast? And I don't know how this has gained so much kind of airtime and traction, but Ralf Schumacher, brother of Michael, has come out and said that that's the driver that Red Bull wanted. Well, yeah, we know that because Christian was spent all the time on his knees in the Williams motorhome through the back end of the season. Like, we know that's how that happened. How's this now suddenly kind of headline news?
Yeah, get yourself in the.
But then also, how did he end up at Alpine?
That's the funny bit, and I have a feeling. I have a feeling, and I think we've touched on this before. I think that's because Williams don't necessarily need the money anymore. In a cost cap era, I think Williams probably are running at the cost cap now, or at least very close to the cost cap. A big payday from Red Bull to buy one of your drivers off you that came through your own academy, who looks very good, probably not that appealing anymore. And I wonder whether Williams are loaning him to Alpine with the expectation that they have got Carlos Sainz short term, and that they're incubating Colapinto to then bring him back. That if you let him fly the coupe to Red Bull, you're not getting him back.
They've got like a buyback, like they've sold him for $3 million, and they've got like a £2.5 million buyback clause on him or something with Alpine. So could happen. We've done 29 minutes of the Japanese Grand Prix, which I think is bloody impressive considering absolutely nothing happened. The most important thing that happened at the weekend, though, was the lap down Formula One World Championship spreadsheet that is going on at the moment. I mean, rightfully so. You weren't particularly happy with your pair of French drivers. Unfortunately for you, they didn't score any points, so we don't have to hear you sing the French national anthem.
Yeah, look, I didn't come into this expecting any points, and they still did worse than I thought they were going to do. They were a long way off. I don't even know what they finished, but it's not as if they finished P11. I think I was down in the bottom 5, possibly, with both of them.
Pierre Gasly, 13th.
Ooh.
And Esteban 18th.
Ah, there we go. Bearing in mind that his rookie teammate, as you say, was P9 or P10.
Yeah.
Not what we needed. Shout out Ollie Bailman, by the way. Good drive. Good drive. Yeah. Lovely graphics as well from Haas this weekend. They can have my social media imagery shout out of the week, which is not going to be a recurring segment. And how many points did you come up? You got some. You closed the gap
disappointingly, genuinely disappointingly. And maybe this is why I'm slightly kind of skewed on the Yuki Tsunoda performance. But I had Kimi and Yuki for my two drivers. Kimi Antonelli, sixth place, 8 points. Brilliant. I honestly thought Yuki was going to stick it in the points. Mm-hmm. And he didn't. So that is my 8 points from Kimi Antonelli, which leaves the championship. I mean, you had a bumper weekend, didn't you, in China? 37 points from the weekend. She's still on 47. I've closed the gap. I'm on 35. I'm still 12 points behind. But these races come thick and fast in the lap down Formula One World Championship spreadsheet. So you just never know. You never know. You never know. And the wheel of spinners sometimes may be good, sometimes may be shit.
Giveth, taketh away. Much like Briatore in that Alpine seat. Right, that's us for our Japanese, I'm not going to say race, procession recap. The Japanese Grand Prix weekend. We'll be back on Thursday to preview the Bahrain Grand Prix, which it feels a little bit weird having the Bahrain Grand Prix be round 4. I'm so attuned to starting my season with that. We'll see which of the which 20 drivers will be lining up on that one. I've got my theories. We'll see what happens. Dan, in the meantime, if they want more content of you, they can go and find that at...
Yeah, just have a look at Dan Jads if you like cricket. If you don't worry.
There you go. That's that. If you want to watch me play games, particularly with beavers at the minute, you can come and do that at twitch.tv/Caleb. No, we finished with tractors. I got it out of the river, and that's all you need.
That was the end of it. That was the end of the farming world for Alex.
We did not plant a crop, but we got the tractor back. In the meantime as well, at LapdownPod on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. If you want to go watch some old clips on there, give us a review, share it with a friend, send us an email, lapdownpod@gmail.com, and we'll see you on Thursday.
Banging.